What an honor to be here on the 21st year. Today was the first day that I got to meet Barbara. The only time I have ever seen Barbara was on a screen this big in Washington, D.C. at the Museum of the Bible, and I've seen her twice like that, so it was very weird seeing her smaller than a very large screen. But you are every bit as beautiful than I imagined you on a very large screen. I ran into a very sweet lady in the bathroom when I got here named Debbie, and she said, "I am so excited to hear your story." And I didn't have the heart to tell her I wasn't telling the story of Rustic Cuff, but Debbie, if you find me afterwards, we can have a chat. I don't usually title messages that I give. I do in my head, but I don't say it out loud. But today, if I were going to title this, it's something that, I like when things rhyme because you remember it. And it would be, don't hesitate, just activate. And I found the word activate because I looked up all the words that rhymed with hesitate. It's amazing how many words rhyme with hesitate. I looked this up last night. I want to tell you about the first story of not hesitating. I was 6 years old, and I grew up in Baltimore, Maryland. And I remember getting out of my bed and going in, very late at night. My parents were still up, and I saw my mom and dad, and they were watching something on the TV, like an infomercial about the homeless and about children who didn't have a home. And standing there, they didn't see me at their door. I was so incredibly moved at 6. I know most of you are like, how do you remember something at 6? I don't remember what I had for breakfast this morning, but I remember what happened at 6 years old. And I remember being so moved, and my mom turned around and saw me, and she said, "What's wrong, sweetie?" And I said, "I have to give all the money I have to the homeless. I have to," which a 6-year-old doesn't generally have all that much money. But I had saved up $60. And my mom said, "Okay, well, you can give all the money you have." And we took that $60, and I remember the crying and being so moved. I remember that feeling, and I knew then I wanted to replicate that feeling. Even though it wiped my bank account out at 6 years old, I wanted to replicate that for every day of my life. I knew, even at that age, that if I would have slept on it, when I woke up the next day, that I would probably have changed my mind and kept the $60. And that's why I would title this, Don't Hesitate, Just Activate. Somebody gave me, I watched this, somebody in this room live this out. There was a woman who had a very large vision and had a venture, and she was looking to give some cuffs to some of the large donors for this mission she had. And she told me later, she said that God asked her to pull over in the parking lot at Walgreens and to find Jill Donovan and Rustic Cuff and email her. And we had never met, and she didn't know how to get in touch. And she said, "I don't know how to." And God said, "Just pull over, don't hesitate, I will activate." And so she sent off an email. It eventually got to me, and we met and began this beautiful friendship and this ripple effect that put into place a lot of amazing things. But that person was Jackie Green, and it is how I met you, Jackie. But it was such a great example of somebody who doesn't hesitate, who just activates. And with that in mind, I got asked to do a podcast in Plano, Texas. Okay, now Plano, Texas, from where I live in Tulsa, Oklahoma, is either a 4-hour drive or a plane flight. And it was a small podcast, and they wanted to interview me. And the truth is, I didn't want to do it. But when you feel in your knower, when you know in your knower that you're supposed to do something, you don't hesitate. And I said yes, because Jackie Green set an example, and I had remembered when I was little, if you hesitate, you miss out, and so does somebody else. And so I said yes, I did this podcast, and I remember going down there thinking, why am I doing this? What will ever come from this? Because that's a lot of times we think, what will the outcome be? But I said, I won't hesitate. I did this podcast, this little podcast, and I don't even, maybe 100 people listened to it. But I did my part. I didn't hesitate. I obeyed God. That was on August the 27th, exactly 6 months later, on February the 27th. One of my girls in customer service brought up an email to me, and she said, "I think you might want to see this." And the subject was Walt Disney World. I mean, I always want to see Walt Disney World. Who doesn't? But I thought an email with the subject line Walt Disney World. Turns out this woman who was an executive at Walt Disney World on February the 27th stayed home from work in Orlando, Florida that day. I don't know if she was sick or she just stayed home. And she said somehow she ran across a little podcast from Plano, Texas, and she loved the story. And Disney loves a great story. And Jill, could we fly you out here to do your presentation and tell your story to 5 of the VPs of Disney World? And I said yes, which then it began this 9-month process. And as of 3 weeks ago, Rustic Cuff gets to be in the for a short period of time, which I'm praying for a longer period, but a window open, and we get to be a light in the middle of Disney World, all from a little teeny podcast in Plano, Texas, because I said, I won't hesitate. Because we hesitate because we think, what's in it for me? And also, one of the reasons we hesitate is that we stand and look at somebody and say, okay, this person is not worthy of the gift. I might feel compelled to do it, but we think we get to judge whether or not they are worthy of the gift. When I first started Rustic Cuff and I felt compelled to just give bracelets away, it was a very uncomfortable thing. You don't want to just walk up to strangers and give away a bracelet. I made my friends and family wear them, and they had to because they were my friends and family. And you have to, or they wouldn't be my friends or family. And that's how you start. You just make everybody who is obligated to do that. Well, I felt compelled, and when you feel in your knower you have to do it, you can't not do it. Because on the other side of that is something much bigger. And I felt so compelled to go into this closet where I had made so many bracelets I didn't even know what the purpose I was making them for. I just couldn't not do it. And God said, go put these bracelets on and then go out into Tulsa and start giving them away. And I'm like, I got to find my friends and my family. I don't want to give them away to strangers, but I remember I was directed to the grocery store right near my home. And I love to tell this story because it is an amazing story of how, when you give something, how you think it's for the other person, but it actually changes your life. I remember I walked into that grocery store, and it was so incredibly crowded that I thought, I think God wants me to go to the small local grocery store. Not this where people really shop for food. I wanted one where they're just milling about. It was like there was something big that was coming, like a tornado warning, and everybody was getting everything. But it was just a regular day. And I walked in, and I thought, okay, I'm going to go to the shortest line. And I looked, and I see a lady that's checking people out, and I knew this was the woman I was supposed to give my first bracelet to, the first stranger. And you have these conversations in your mind, do it, don't do it, no, do it, no. And you drive yourself crazy. It's easier just to do it on the first one. And so I saw her, and I thought, I'll go grocery shopping first, because there were 7 people in her line. And I said, by the time that I get up to her line, maybe all this would have cleared out. And I hadn't been grocery shopping. I don't like to cook, and I hadn't been grocery shopping in a while, so I just kind of pretended the sugar goes with the salt. And I think if you get some flour, I went around the grocery store, and I got into her line, and by the time I got up to her, and I had put 3 of them on to give away, and I knew I couldn't hesitate. I knew that was the day. And by the time I got up to her line, there were still 5 people behind me in line. And you want to do one thing where you're like, okay, you go ahead. You go ahead. But I looked at her, and I smiled, and I didn't look down, and I took this bracelet off, and I said, I think that I'm supposed to give this to you. I just feel like I'm supposed to. And immediately, this woman who I'd never met before starts to just break down and cry. And now I'm watching the 5 people watching me watch her cry. And I said, God, why? I should have hesitated. I should have waited till the midnight hour. And she's crying, and I'm looking down, and I looked up at her, and I said, ma'am, are you okay? And she said, just with tears in her eyes, said, I've never seen you before, which is because I didn't like to grocery shop. But she said, I've never seen you before, and you would have no way of knowing this, but yesterday, I was diagnosed with breast cancer. And when I looked down, I saw that I had randomly, not so randomly, given her a pink cuff. And she looked back up at me and she said, when I was in the office and I got this diagnosis, I said, God, would you give me a sign of hope that everything is going to be okay? And then she looked straight at me and said, thank you for being that sign of hope. And it And I walked out to my car, shut the door. It was the very beginning of Rustic Cuff. And I said, this is the thing that I want to do every day for the rest of my life. This is my get to. Because I had grown up and everybody says, I have to do this. I have to go to work. I have to take my kids. And I said, I want that thing that I get to say I get to. And when I didn't hesitate and gave this woman the cuff, and she said I was her sign of hope, she said, I said, this is the get to. This is the moment. And I want to spend every single day not hesitating, because it then activated my desire for this company to grow and for other people to share this kindness and not hesitate. I was in Georgia a few weeks ago, actually with Jackie, and was mentioning about not hesitating when you feel compelled to give, to share your time, to give your money, to sit down and write, to minister, whatever it is. I was saying, don't hesitate. And when we say, this is what I want to do, God often comes and tests us right away. And I flew home from Georgia, and I was driving to my house from the airport, and this is when I was tested. And I see a lady in front of Quick Trip. It was about 45 degrees outside, and she had no jacket on, and she was laying on this sidewalk, and I felt like I was sleeping, that I was supposed to stop and give her whatever money I had in my back pocket. I wasn't carrying cash. I just knew that I had a little bit in my back pocket. I pulled it out, and it was a 20, a 10, and a 5, $35. And I thought, I'm late getting home to my house. My kids are waiting for me. I have 2 little girls, and I thought, I've been gone for 3 days. I have to get home. So I drove right by her. And you know what happens when you hesitate? It just taps you on the shoulder. And so I turned back around the Quick Trip, and I saw her again, and I thought, but she's sleeping, God. I don't think you want me to wake her up to give her $35. So I looked at her. She was sleeping so soundly, and she looked so happy. They're just sleeping. And so I left, and then it's like, but I'm hesitating. This is the thing I just spoke about. And so I turned back around, and I sat in the parking lot of Quick Trip, and I had no bank card to get cash. I just had that $35 and a credit card. And I walked in, and I purchased her some food, and then I walked over to her. Again, another awkward moment, a sleeping homeless person. What do you say when you wake them up? How do you wake them up? But I couldn't not do it. And so I crouched down here, and I said, and I'd never done this before, and I just sort of tapped her, which is frightening for her. And she woke up, and I said, what would you say? I said, how you doing? What? How are you doing? She's 40 degrees, and she doesn't have a jacket on, and she's laying out there. And I said, how are you doing? And she said, I'm hungry, and I'm cold. And I said, well, I have some lunch for you here. And then I took this jacket off that was too tight on me anyhow, and I gave it to her. And I didn't want the jacket, and I was thrilled, but it was a beautiful jacket. But I gave it to her, and now I'm cold. And she said, I'd really love to go sleep somewhere. I haven't slept in days. And I said, well, all I have is $35, and I want to give that to you. And she said, that's all I need. My hotel would be $35. The man just told me my hotel would be $35. She took that. I got back in my car, and the next thing I literally turned around, and she was gone. We don't know who we're entertaining. When we hesitate, we don't know who it is that is in front of us, and we can't be the judge. When we pass people, we pass people, and you think automatically they don't deserve my gift. They're going to take it, and they're going to go do this with it or that with it. They don't. Who are we to judge what they're going to do with it? And so it is such a great reminder. Who knows? She could have been an angel, and I had exactly what she needed. When I was preparing for this, because there's so many, many things that we hesitate, which means we're missing out on so many things that God has for us that He could activate. When I was preparing for this, I thought, I do a new hobby every year since I was 10 years old, which means I've done 20 years of hobbies. Okay, I've done 40 years of hobbies, 40 years. 40, it's a lot of hobbies. Whatever your hobby you have, I have tried that hobby. And really. And so my hobby this year is to learn how to play the saxophone. And it's hard. I mean, it's very hard to get a noise to come out of there. But it's my hobby this year. And someday I'm going to play at the NBA, at the Thunder game, play the national anthem. And I'm saying it in front of all these people. I really am. I am. And if I do, I will buy every one of you a great ticket in my mind. But I am. But besides playing the saxophone, there are times I do mini hobbies. And my mini hobby this year, as of last night, is rhyming, okay? Because it's the way we remember great things, through rhymes. It's why we love Dr. Seuss books, because how many of you can say pages off of the Dr. Seuss books? Because it rhymes. And so last night, after one of my daughter's basketball games, and I went to Los Cabos, I got the kids menu, and I wrote down every word that I could find that rhymed with hesitate. And I know what you're thinking. What words rhyme with hesitate? I mean, and I want you to remember this. I want you to remember to not hesitate when you feel in your knower you're supposed to do something. It's the most important thing. We're at Rustic Cuff is at Disney World because I said I won't hesitate because somebody else set an example for not hesitating. And so I wrote down every word that rhymed with hesitate. And so I came up with last night something for you to remember that is my new hobby that you will remember from the word hesitate. Are you ready? Okay. So this is, you have to give me a little grace because this is brand new. I do this about as well as I play the sax, but here we go. Someday you will stand before God at the pearly gates, and he will say, I did not ask you to judge whether or not they would be a good candidate. I did not ask you to decide if they had a great mental state. I only am asking you to give, to be a vessel, to listen to your knower, and to let my love liberate. Regardless if they are an inmate or a head of state, it is not our position to be a magistrate. I know, right? He's asked us to take his kindness and watch the ripple effect permeate. We are to be his hands and feet and let his light radiate. Whether you are 5, 30, or 68, never underestimate what God can generate when he can work through a life that decides to activate and not hesitate. Amen. I know you're not going to remember that whole thing, but you will remember. Don't hesitate, just activate. And if you can remember this, then wow, you call me and we'll give you a free cup if you can say all that by memory. But thank you for the honor of being here. What an amazing mission this is, the ripple effect. You will never know what you give on this side of heaven, just as I will never know what that cuff did for the woman who had breast cancer, what that does for her. I've never seen her from that day. I will never know what that $35 started in the woman. You will never know. Here's the thing. You don't know when you give to somebody, you don't know that that person will not have the greatest influence on one of your children later in life. We don't know. For all you know, it could be somebody who teaches your child the most important lesson of their life, all because you decided not to hesitate. And that is the best time when God activates, when you say, I won't hesitate. Thank you very, very much.